Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, we're going to pick up where we left off. And we were talking about i'ara or ijara. We talked about ijara. And ijara we talked about, which is basically renting. And so we talked about who's responsible of it and what they're supposed to pay and whatnot. And now we're going to go into the next chapter, which is called ji'ala. Ji'ala or ja'ala or ju'ala. All of these are okay to say. It's all of them are okay. And the basic meaning of this is it's a prize for someone doing something. So you say, whoever finds my phone that was lost, I'll give you $200. All right, this is ji'ala. So I'd say, whoever finds my lost iPhone and gets it back to me, I'll give him $200, okay? And so if that person, if whoever it is, anyone who heard me do that, or anyone who told them about it that was trustworthy, heard it, it's like, oh, this guy's looking for his phone, he gets that phone, he finds the phone, he gives it to me, I owe him $200. I said I was going to give him $200. I said, whoever gives me this phone, I'm going to give him $200. He went out there and got it and gave it back to me, $200. He gets the price. All right? This is the basic principle of ji'ala. And we'll talk about this, and it's similar to ijara. Like ijara is like renting something, or like renting a service. So in essence, it's almost like you're renting a service, but it's different in some ways. One of it is we don't know exactly what it's going to take to get this done. Nobody knows what it's going to take for this person to find my phone. Maybe it was standing in front of him when he heard it. He's like, oh. He gives it, right away. Maybe he didn't do any work for it. Maybe he has to do a ton of work. He doesn't know. So this is different than ijara. In ijara, you have to know how much work it's going to be. But the thing that we're looking for, and that is known. And then also another way that it differs from that is that it is something. It's something that is not necessarily. We don't know who's doing this. Who's the person that's actually going to follow through with this? It's just like an open broadcast. Whoever does this gets this prize. And so whoever does it gets the prize. And so then the other one is also that it is a reward. And this is like a different than, this is kind of like a reward based system as opposed to ijara, which is actually a payment for services that has been put forward. And the payment comes at the beginning, as opposed to here, the payment comes when it happens. So the ijara we talked about, the person is like if they don't say when he's going to pay, he has to pay at the beginning, unless specified. And here he would pay when he gets it done at the end of the job. And also then that's the other difference, is that it comes at the end there. And so it's like a reward, and then it comes at the end. So this is the basic premise of ji'ala. We'll talk about some of the conditions here that Abu Shujaa mentions rahimahullah. So he says, wal ji'alatu ja'izatun. So he says it's permissible, and this is with ijma' that this is permissible, and this also, like the basis of it from the hadith is there was a like a chief of a tribe that got stung by a scorpion, and he said, whoever can heal me or with this, they can have such and such of ghanam, like they have such and such of like sheep and whatnot. So then. One of the Sahabi came to him and recited Fatiha on him, did ruqya, and he was healed. And so then he got that in return. And the Prophet ﷺ was very pleased with him and said, this is the best things that you could get a reward from is the Quran. So this is also one of the other proofs from this hadith, is that the Quran, you can get a reward for using the Quran or reciting the Quran or something. So this is of the basis that comes in the hadith, and also there's ijma' on this issue as well. And also in the Quran, there's also like the example, وَلِمَنْ جَاءَ بِهِ حِمْلُ بَعِيرٍ, that Yusuf, he said, whoever comes back with that cup, whoever comes back with it, then whoever comes back to it with me, then he'll have حِمْلُ بَعِيرٍ, which is like it's a whole camel load of reward for whoever comes back and brings back the cup and whatnot. So, and this is, of course, there's a basic principle in the Shafi'i madhab, is that we don't, we talked about it in the Mutn, I believe we talked about it in the Mutn Shujaa, but the shariah that comes before us, is it shariah for us or is it not? And so this is a usuli issue. So like if we have an example here of Yusuf alayhi salam, and that this is something that he did, or that he prescribed, is that evidence for us to use? And the Shafi'i say no. The shariah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this abrogates everything that came before. So we don't take any rulings from anything that comes in the Quran from the previous shariah. Except, of course, like akhlaq and these basic things of tawheed. Okay, this is something. But when it comes to like details of the sharia, we only take this from the Quran and Sunnah, from what is not from the qisas or like the stories that happened before, but from what happens in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is an issue. So they won't actually use this as proof, as evidence. That ayah, they won't use it as evidence, even though it does come in the Quran. And so also he mentions here the next thing. So the first thing is that it's jaiza, that it's permissible. And he says, وَهُوَ أَن يَشْتَرِطَ فِي رَدِّ ضَالَتِهِ عِوَضًا مَعْلُومًا. And so here he gives what it is in essence of what is the ji'ala. He says it is to make a condition for someone to return it. فِي رَدِّ ضَالَتِهِ. ضَالَة is something that's lost, like a lost item. To make a condition for the returning of a lost item, عِوَضًا مَعْلُومًا, and to give in repayment to that, and عِوَض, which is like the repayment, مَعْلُومًا, like something that's a payment that is known, a known payment. So he can't have it something that's just like an ambiguous reward. He needs to actually specify what that reward is. So that person who's going out there and doing this, he knows what the reward is that he should be going for. So in essence, that should be known, and that it will come to him. And then he says here the next thing, فَإِذَا رَدَّهَا إِسْتَحَقَّ ذَلِكَ الْعِوَضَ الْمَشْرُوطَ. So he says here, and if he returned this item, like if he got this item for, he did the job, he comes back and gives it to him, then he deserves إِسْتَحَقَّ ذَلِكَ الْعِوَض. Then he deserves that price that was set there, or like that reward for him doing that was mentioned. So this is the basic premise of this thing. And of course, the person that does this, he absolutely has to be paid for his job. And of course, the person who makes this, he can change it. He can change his mind in what he's doing. Like, so if he wants to change the amount, say at first he says I'm gonna give this person $100 for finding my phone. No one found his phone yet. I'm gonna give you guys $200. Okay, and he can do that. He can raise it, or he can lower it too. And so he can change the price. If the person heard the higher price and then he went out there and did it and didn't hear about the price change, then he would get paid for someone doing his work. He would get paid the same amount as what someone got doing his work. Say he heard $200, and then the guy changed his mind and said $50, and he didn't hear him. So he would get as much work as someone that he put into it. Like if he was actually hired to do this, he would have that much work that he's allowed to get in repayment, or like that's his payment. His payment would be as if someone was hired to do this exact job. After he has done it. So, and there's a basic principle with this, is if anything that is like al-fasil al-uqud kasahiha, and so like anything that is that happens in like a transaction and whatnot that is fasid, like it's bad. It's treated in regards to how people's is dealt with, like the harm that is caused. It's treated as if it was sahih. So if there's ever an issue with something where there was a problem in the transaction, but there's going to be great harm on this person since it happened, you look at it, what was it? If it was a sahih transaction, how much would this person get from it? Then you would use that. In essence, you go through, okay, if this was sahih, how much would he deserve? Okay, this is how much he deserves? Okay. And you would deal with it in that sense. So occasionally when this is a way out, if something is broken in certain situations, then this principle will come up here and there, especially when we talk about transactions. So the next thing the author here, he says, rahimahullah, he says, faslun. وَإِذَا دَفَعَ لِرَجُلٍ أَرْضًا لِيَزْرَعَهَا وشرط له جزءا معلوما من ريعها لم يجوز. And so this is the first thing he talks about is this is a bab that is called muzara'a or mukhabara. And muzara'a is when someone gives someone a land to work on, and basically what he wants in repayment for it is what a certain amount of what comes back from, like a certain percentage of what comes out of the crops. So say I have land, and someone's coming up to me, and I want someone to use this land. So I find this guy, he's a farmer and whatnot. He knows how to farm, but he doesn't have land. So I tell him, I got my land here. Go ahead, use this land, and you can have half, and I'll have the other half of whatever it grows. And this is not okay. Because in this case, this is not, we don't know how much this half is going to be. If the crop is good, it'll be so much. If the crop is not good, then maybe he doesn't get anything. And so in this case, there's a big ambiguity. So this one's not permissible. And also these come as there's also a hadith that talks about that this is not permissible as well. Al-muzara'a. And also the other one is mukhabara. And mukhabara is just a little bit different in that, in this case, the badr, or like the seeds, would be for, so the first one would be this person, like the muzara'a. The seeds are the owner's seeds. So he gives the seeds to the person to go and do the work. And at the end of it, he would have like a certain portion that is for him, that is a percentage. And the mukhabara is if the seeds came from the worker. So if the worker brought his own seeds to work the field, then in this case he would have, that would be called the mukhabara. And in the muzara'a is if the seeds are for the owner of the land. Right? So it's basically the same transaction. The person comes, he does the work, and he gets a percentage of the crops. And he gives the other percentage to the owner of the land. And the muzara'a, in the muzara'a, the seeds are for the owner of the land. He's the one who provides the seeds for the crops. And in the mukhabara, the seeds come from the actual worker himself. He has to bring his own seeds. And both of these are impermissible in this. And there's a way to do this, but he's going to talk about a way to work with the land and whatnot. So he says, فَإِذَا دَفَعَ إِلَى رَجُلٍ أَرْضًا لِيَزْرَعَهَا. So if he gives the land to someone to like a worker to work it and to grow on it, وَشَرْطَ لَهُ جُزًا مَعْلُومًا مِنْ رَيْعِهَا. Ray'a here is the yield or the profit, or like what the produce that comes from this. So if he says a certain portion, a juz, which is like a percentage, like you'd say half, a quarter, a third, or whatever it is. He says and gave him a certain portion of that. In like percentage wise, in that case, lam yajuz, this is not permissible. In that, whether or not he's the one who brought his own seeds or someone else brought the seeds, it doesn't matter. In this case, it's not permissible. But then he says, here's the permissible way: is وَإِنْ أَكْرَاهُ إِيَّاهُ بِذَهَبٍ أَوْ فِضَّةٍ أَوْ شَرَطَ لَهُ طَعَامًا مَعْلُومًا فِي ذِمَّتِهِ جَازَ. And so here's the way that is permissible: is if he akra, or ikra is also another way of saying it, which is the same as ijara. Usually, if someone is like lending out an actual piece of something, like they're lending out an actual whether it's like a car or whether this is a piece of land, you would say ikra as opposed to ajara. Like ijara would usually be a service. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So if he had this, if he gave a rent for his land, rented out is the proper word. If he rented out this land for him for an amount of dhahab or gold, no problem. Gold or silver. So if he rented out for gold or silver, there's no problem with renting, because we know how much this is and it's a certain service. There's no problem with this transaction. The problem with the beginning is that we don't know how much this yield is going to be. So if he's giving a third of it or a half of it, he doesn't know if this is going to be a lot or a little bit. So there's jahala here. As opposed to here, if he knows a certain amount of gold or silver that he's going to give, no problem. Or he says the other way to do it that's permissible is شَرَطَ لَهُ طَعَامًا مَعْلُومًا فِي ذِمَّتِهِ. Or he made a certain amount of food, like food stuff, that is ma'luman. So like what kind of food? I'm going to give you so many apples of this type of apples at the end of the season. I'm going to give you this many baskets of apples of this thing. It's like a salam. We talked about salam, how someone can have this payment before. So it's kind of like this. He will have this, there's certain, he's like, I'm going to get you so many apples and so many baskets of apples, or how many kilos, however they do that. And this is how many watermelons, and this how many, maybe he does like grain. He has a certain amount of grain that he's going to give him from wheat. For letting him use this is a certain amount that is set, and so whether or not he comes through with his harvest, he still owes this because it's a price. He's paying with it, even if it is it's not gold and silver, no problem, because it's a set price of foodstuffs. So this is okay. But the problem is if he's trying to use a certain if he's trying to use an actual percentage of his yield, this is unknown, so you can't use this. And this is the thing that is prohibited. And this is the interpretation of it in the Shafi'i madhab of the mukhabara and muzara'a. These are the two types that are prohibited. But it's okay to do other than that when it comes to just renting out the land itself, whether you're renting out with gold, silver, or an actual amount of food stuff, like an actual set amount, which is like a dain for this person to pay up on. Any questions on this chapter before we move on?
Didn't we talk about a very similar situation, I think maybe a class ago or before that, in which if somebody doesn't have the time, to look after his farm, he can hire somebody to go ahead and work on that?
This is muqaddam musaqa. Musaqa, which is to work on his farm. And so and he also said it was only permissible in two types. Remember, tamar and grapes.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yep. And this was, he said, so it's permissible. Yeah, it's similar to this, but this one it's permissible. But everything comes from the actual owner itself. These people are just working. They're just working to make sure that the dates and whatnot are done, and they actually get a percentage. Here, they actually get a percentage. But this is different than this person that's growing crops other than these two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep.
So that one was just only exception for dates and grapes.
It is weird that he separated these three, because in some books they do put them all together. They put them all together and they have them all together in one place because they're very similar. Yeah. But he puts this after ja'ala, which is similar to it, and also after ijara, which is before that, which is also, that's the proper way of doing this, is the ijara. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. And so the next thing, and also make sure any words in here that are in there, ask. If there's any words that you don't understand, ask what the translation is to the word, so you know. So the next chapter he's going to go into is called Ihya al-Mawat. And so Ihya, which is like raising to life, bringing to life. Al-Mawat, which is the wastelands. Mawat is usually like it would be like the wastelands. So if you have, say you have a wasteland and there's nothing there, nobody owns it, it's just sitting there. So say you want to do something with this land, you got an idea, you want to go do something about this land, nobody owns this, it's not previously owned by anybody. You can go there, you can set up shop, start doing your thing, whatever you're trying to do, and then you have first rights to this. And if you've put something there, then you have the rights to this, and this becomes yours. This is the basic principle of it. He's going to talk about some of the rulings of how this works. But this is a way to encourage people to work the land and also to do something with the land that hasn't had anything done with before. And so this is called Ihya al-Mawat. So he says, Faslan. وَإِحْيَا الْمَوَاتِ جَائِزٌ بِشَرْطَيْنِ. So he says it's permissible with two conditions. Let's talk about these two conditions. The first of them, أَن يَكُونَ الْمُحْيِي مُسْلِمًا. So the muhyi, the person who is doing the ihya. And this is the ism fa'il, min ahya, muhyi. So the person who is, he's bringing this land to life, and of course Allah is the one who brings life to everything. But the one who's bringing this land into like an actual shape of doing something that he wants to do with this, he would be called the al-muhyi. And he needs to be Muslim. So if we have someone who is not Muslim, then they can't do this in this case. So if we had, like, say, a dhimmi is someone who has a pact with the Muslims, there that he can stay here and he pays just a certain amount of jizya every single year. And this person, a dhimmi, he can't do this taking over of wasteland. It has to be someone who's Muslim, and so he doesn't get the right to start taking over land. But of course, like, he can go gather firewood and do fishing or hunting and whatnot in these wastelands. No problem with that. But as far as like taking ownership of it, no. That's he can't do that with the wastelands. So this person needs to be Muslim, and this is the first thing. And then the second condition is وَأَن تَكُونَ الْأَرْضُ حُرَّةً لَمْ يَجْرِ عَلَيْهَا مِلْكٌ لِمُسْلِمٍ. And this, I mentioned this when I was talking about the meaning of it, is that this ard, like this land, is something that is free, or it's free from any attachments to someone before, a previous ownership. So there's no previous ownership from a Muslim on this land. And it needs to also be like free from any buildings and whatnot. This is something that's free. It's not owned by anybody. Maybe if there's buildings on it, it's probably owned by another family from before. And so this needs to be looked at and see who actually owns this land from before. Maybe because it's not just free land for grabs. If someone actually worked it before, this is for like new land. And so this is what he mentions here, that of these two conditions, that it's a Muslim that's taking it over, and then it is that there has never been ownership on it previously, and if it has, then we have to look at that owner before. Yeah, and if somebody doesn't know who owned it before, but they're sure that someone worked the land before, then it's property that needs to be that its owner needs to be found. In that case, so you would give it to the government to look at and see who does this belong to, who once lived here before, and see where their heirs are if this person died and passed away and whatnot, to make sure it gets to its rightful owner. And so then the next thing that he talks about is the actual the characteristics of ihya. Like, what does this look like? What does someone have to do to actually consider this, that he actually brought it there? What's the bare minimum for him to get this? So he says, وَصِفَةُ الْإِحْيَاءِ مَا كَانَ فِي الْعَادَةِ عِمَارَةً لِلْمُحْيَاءِ. And so he says the characteristics of ihya is مَا كَانَ فِي الْعَادَةِ عِمَارَةً لِلْمُحْيَاءِ. So it's what is normally and customarily considered as imara. And imara is something which is kind of it's kind of like building. You kind of say this is like the English word for imara. It's kind of like building or establishing. This is another way of saying it, establishing. So establishing something in that lane, and it depends on the thing. And so what is normally established for the thing, lil muhya, which is the thing that he's trying to accomplish with his goal for this land. So if his land was basically, he wanted to build a cottage for hunting, then he would need to, in this case, he needed to build some walls and whatnot, and he would need to put a door onto the place and actually make it somewhat cohesive. This is my land. I put it here first, and this is his. Now, since he put it there, this is his cottage or whatever, for a hunting cottage. Or if it's something such as it's like an orchard, then he needs to put a little bit of a wall around his orchard and start planting something. Or if he digs a well, same thing. He actually needs to dig the well and whatnot, and make it. He actually make a building for whatever he's trying to do with this area. And then once he does this and he has this, then it would become his. But if he hasn't done this, then if he started something, he has first rights to it. But it doesn't become like his property until he finishes at least that imara, which is like the building around that, what would normally be taken. And of course, all of this comes back to what would normally be done to a plot for what he's trying to do with it, which it differs. Of course, a hunting cabin is different than like a pasture, or like he's trying to actually raise livestock over here, and so he has like an actual pen for livestock and all this other stuff. That takes a lot more than just like a hunting cabin. Or if someone is trying to, of course, grow things, then this, depending on what they grow, you would have to have something different for that. And so all of this, you'd look into what is the type of thing he's doing, and then he would have to do something that is building, that is like the bare minimum of what you would consider that he actually built here, for this to become his. And so the next thing he says here, وَيَجِبُ بَذْلُ الْمَاءِ بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطَ. So here he's talking about something that is similar to it. But what if someone is out in the wilderness, they're walking, and they need water? And this other person that has, say he's dug a well or something, he has water for him and his house and for his livestock over here in the middle of the wilderness. This person is hungry or thirsty and comes up to him, he wants to drink. Then in this case, he has to give it to him with three conditions. He has to give him water. This person who came to him for water, he has to give it to him in three conditions. One is أن يفطر في حاجته. So this is the first condition, that the water has to be more than what he needs. So this person can't ask him for water that this person actually needs right now. So if this person only has enough water for himself, and he doesn't have any extra for this, or for himself, his family to drink today, and for his livestock, and then in this case, he can't order this person to take away this guy's water when he doesn't have enough for today. But if he does have more than enough for today, for him and all his livestock and the people in his family and what he needs right now, then in this case he has to give it. He can't hold this back from someone else. And also this comes from a hadith in the Sahihain that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "لا تمنعوا فضل الماء لتمنعوا به الكلى." And so like that, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says here, don't stop the extra of water. And so like this is a serious thing, of course, like to stop someone from having water when they need it. Of course, this is like a crime against this person if this person has more than what they need. So the first condition I mentioned that makes it obligatory to give him that water is that he has more than enough for him and other than him of like animals or things that are muhtarama. And muhtarama means that its life is respected. Such as like most animals are muhtarama except for like a pig. A pig is not muhtarama. So if he needs to, he has water for his pig, but he's not going to give it to the man. In this case, okay, he has to give it to the man. Or if he has water for a mad dog, the mad dog that's crazy, then he can't say that this water that would be for the mad dog that is extra than what he needs, except for the mad dog needs it. In this case, he would need to give it to the person, that's asking for it. Or the same thing with someone who is, they mentioned some other people, such as like tariq as-salah. He's not muhtarama, like the person who has left the salah, or something of this case. So, or like someone who left the deen, or someone that is like battling a harbi, which is like someone who is against Islam, in this sense. So in this case, like these people would not be muhtarama. So if he has, if it came between this guy and someone else, then in this case this person wouldn't stop the person from getting his water. There's just a little extra details on that. And so this is the first one, that it's the first condition is that it's more than what he has that he needs for him and all of the people around him that are muhtarama. And then the next thing, which is وَأَن يَكُونَ مِمَّا يُسْتَخْلَفُ فِي بِئْرٍ أَوْ عَيْنٍ. And so, and that also this is, and that it is more than what he needs, or the second condition is what other than him needs from the people that are muhtarama, such as he says, وَأَن يَحْتَاجِ إِلَيْهَا غَيْرِهِ لِنَفْسِهِ أَوْ بِهِيمَتِهِ. And so, so if he needs something else for other than him or for his animals. And then the last one here is that also this water is something that normally would come back. So if I'm going to use water from a well, normally the water comes right back. So if I spent all the water in the well, maybe it goes dry when I finish up for today because I take all of the things out there. But if I go to sleep and I wake up tomorrow morning, there might be more water, or like a spring, the same thing. So even if I do use up the water, it will come back. So if it is of this water that is rejuvenating, in this case, then it would be something there. What if it's not rejuvenating? So he just got like a container of water sitting on top of his roof. This is not a rejuvenating thing. He's just got a container of water and this is it. So in this case, he wouldn't have to give this out. But if it is from a well or from like a small spring or something of this sort, a spring, he has to give the extra water that he's not using right now. And also this would be the same thing. Say maybe he needs it for a couple weeks. He says, oh, if I give you this, I'm not going to have enough water for the next week. But he'll have enough water for today or the next day. Like in this case, he would need to give out this extra water that he doesn't need right now, because this is something that normally would replenish. And this is the basis of this. And this is kind of a mini chapter inside of Ihya al-Mawat, but this also goes to show also like the amount of like completeness that the shariah has. That it doesn't leave anything untouched when it comes to the hayat of insan. Like all of the life of mankind is like discussed in what we should do. And also, I didn't mention the hadith for Ihya al-Mawat, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man amra ardan laysat li ahadin fahuwa ahaqqu biha." This is the hadith that is like the basis of this. That whoever uses a plot of land that isn't for anybody, then he is the one with the most right to it. And of course, this is an incentive for mankind to build and to establish himself in the earth. And of course, we are khalifa in the earth. Like we come after each other, and we should be caretakers of the earth in a good way and use this properly. And so this is an incentive for people to use this, use the wasteland that is out there. And of course, people can look into. There's many ways to do. Like rejuvenating of the earth, and someone could look into permaculture if they're wanting, like, this is not a fiqh class, but like permaculture is a way for someone to rejuvenate the earth that is barren, And this is there's many great things like turning the deserts green. This is something that is possible. There's ways to do this with smart planning and whatnot, and this can really bring a lot of life back to a dead land. Inshallah. Any questions? Bedl is like giving. He has to give out.
Could bedl in this context be translated as a forceful taking? Could bedl in this context be translated?
No, he's supposed to take. But if there is a situation where someone's going to die, and someone isn't getting them their water, then he can forcefully take it. But he has to pay him back. But he can take it forcefully. Same thing with food. If someone's going to die, and this person that has food is preventing him from it, he can take it from him by force. And of course he's going to be like killing this person, but take it by the least amount of force necessary to keep himself alive. But he has to pay him back for the damages of him taking that. But this is another situation. Of course, anyone who is in a situation where other people around them are hungry or thirsty, you have to feed them. This is an obligation. It's an obligation, and at the very least, in that you, like, if you're super stingy and you want to make them pay, at least make them, like, at least give them that, that they're going to pay. But you can't leave hungry people out there. This is haram. Yeah, and this is aslan, like, this is something way back in the day people used to know, that they could knock on the door and ask people. Here in Egypt, it was known that people could ask on the door, they say, I'm hungry, and someone would give them food. And this is the rights of the people. Like, there should never be hungry people around. Like, actually hungry people that have no way to get food. And of course, if you have beggars and whatnot that they have food but they're just begging, that's something. But like an actual hungry person, they should be given food.
But the thing is, you wouldn't know, right?
If they ask for food, they're not asking for money. If they're asking for food, and you got it?
Most people are asking like money for food.
Yeah, that's what they say. But if they're actually asking for food and whatnot, you see that there's a difference here. Between this person who's asking for food. Like, if you were to give some of the people that are asking for money, if you were to hand them a bag of rice, would they be happy or no? So there's a difference, but at the same time, we should work to make sure that people are, like, the actually hungry people. There should never be hungry people. And of course, this is in places where people exploit begging, and then we don't know who the real needy people are. This is a hardship. Because maybe if we gave all our money to the beggars, then the real needy people would be never be addressed, because they actually have pride, not to go out there and beg,
You mentioned if there's more excess water, like beyond the person's needs, is it for the person and his livestock?
Yeah.
So if that person comes and he's like, he really needs water, is he gonna favor his animals over this human being?
Like, in a certain sense, to say that it's obligatory for him to give it to this person free of charge. Okay, this is one thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But of course, if it's not between like a free of charge and whatnot, of course, a Muslim's life comes before any animal's life. And then if it ever comes between two people's life, then a Muslim comes before a non-Muslim. Yeah. And there's other details of who comes first in these gnarly situations, but that will come in other lessons, inshallah. So inshallah, that's for the Ihya al-Mawat. And any other questions before we move on?
Do you think this would apply in our time? Like, if it just...
There are some places where it could apply. There are some places, like say if you're in Australia, some of the wastelands that are out there, or if we were to open lands. Like say we were to expand like the Islamic Empire into lands that we don't know about, and we could find a bunch of places that were uninhabited, and then the first person who comes, he's the first one who gets it. And this is the madhab of Shafi'i, but some people have different opinions in this. But yeah, it could apply in wastelands, because most people don't own wastelands,
Sure.
Yeah. Or at least not individuals. So the next thing that we're going to go into, inshallah, is we'll go into waqf, which waqf, of course, in Arabic we would say like waqf is like I'm stopping something, and also this has a couple other names as well. It has tahbis or tasbil, which means like to put it in tasbil, which is to put it in to say this is fi sabilillah. So this is like waqf. You say this is fi sabilillah. So if someone were to say this is fi sabilillah, then he has put this into, this is for Allah, and this person can't touch it. And there's also another type of waqf, a couple different names for it. And in general, it's habs, which is like locking up something, or locking up the ownership of something, and so there's different terms that can be used, and all of them, they basically run around the same meaning of that. And the meaning of it in the Sharia is حبس مال يمكن الانتفاع به مع بقاء عينه بقطع التصرف في رقبته على مصرف مباح موجود ويجمع على وقوف وأوقاف. So you've probably heard the awqaf before, but this is like the waqf that people, a lot of times they'll put money, or they'll put property, or they'll put certain resources into a waqf, or the awqaf, which is like the people who look over these resources, make sure that these resources are put into play as they were originally appointed by the people who put this into waqf. And going over the kind of that definition I gave, habsu malin. So it's like it's locking up some type of property. يمكن الانتفاع به مع بقاء عينه. So like that, this is something that can be benefited with its essence remaining. As we talked, like something like this, we talked about something that could be lended. Like something that could be lended, anything that could be lended could also be have waqf on it. He said بِقَطِّ التصرف في رقبته. And so like, and also like by cutting off the ability to do any tasarruf in this, like which is to do any transaction with this anymore. على مصرف مباح موجود. In putting it into a place, masrif, which is like a place of spending, mubah, that is allowed to do. Like this is something that's allowed, and mawjud, that is actually there. Like something that is actually there that someone would do this for. And so this is the basic meaning of this. And of the examples of this is Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. And when Talha radiallahu anhu, when he heard this ayah, he was very moved by this ayah. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. And birr is like the best of goods, until you give from what you love. Until you give from what you love, like it's for him to love. And so when he heard this ayah, as many of the Sahaba were when they heard this ayah in other like mu'ayid from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they would rush to do this right away. And so when he said this, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said that I have my garden. It's called Bayruhat, which was like right in front of. It's in Medina. It's like right around the area of the Masjid al-Nabawi. He said, this is the most loved thing for me, and so I give it to you to do whatever you wish with it. So spend it however you wish. This is for you. He gave it to the Prophet ﷺ, do whatever you wish with this, because he wanted this reward of birr from Allah. And like this is that reward. And of course, this was the most loved thing for him, so he gave it right away. He went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him to do what you wish with this. And so this is of the examples of waqf that he did with this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he had him divide it between his family, like the extended family of yarhamakallah, of Talha radiallahu anhu. He had him divide it between some of his aqarib. And so and this is also of the things that someone can do, like sadaqah jariyah. This is for someone to do sadaqah jariyah. This is of the three things that doesn't end after the death of a person. So for them to make a waqf and to make like a certain thing that is going to happen for someone, this is a beautiful thing. You know, and this can happen whether it's a masjid. Some people do masjid, some people do masahif in the masjid, some people do like things for the masjid itself, some people do things for ilm. And so like traditionally back in the day, there would be awqaf that were specified for certain majalis for ilm. So like a certain person, they say, we want someone who comes here that teaches the Shafi'i madhab, he's going to get this stipend every single whatnot. Like every single year he's going to get this stipend for teaching the Shafi'i madhab, for instance. So someone who came there and he established all of the shurut, or all the conditions that this person wanted for a teacher, then he would get the waqf for him to do that. And so they would sometimes have like different awqaf. That would actually be for madhabs. So sometimes they would have for madhabs or for different types of teaching, or for a masajid, or for these things. And of course, this is a great way to put someone's money into use that is going to help them after they pass away and for like later generations. And some of the awqaf that are here in like Egypt and now, and in some of the other places, they've been going for over 1,000 years maybe. Like some of these awqaf, they've been going for a long time. So of course, like someone who did something way back then, and it can reach us even now. And so this is of course some of the benefits of some of the things that they've done. And that's where you hear like the awqaf. A lot of times these people will be the ones who actually look over and make sure that these things are run properly. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So he's going to talk about the waqf, and he says here, wal waqfu jaizun. So he says it's permissible, and of course it could be mustahab as well, in many scenarios. And so he says it's jaiz and bi thalathati shura'it, and then it's permissible with 3 conditions. And the first of these that he mentions here is, he says, أن يكون مما ينتفع به مع بقاء عينه. And he says that it's something that is able to be benefited from, مع بقاء عينه, that while its essence is remaining. So like if it's a building, or if it was say like it was a certain, like maybe if there were slaves or whatnot, this would be something that could remain. Anything that we mentioned before that could be lended, or that could be anything that could be lended, or that could be like basically rented out. This is also something that could have waqf on it. In most cases, as long as it's like ayn, it's an actual object. And he also says here, the second condition is وَأَنْ يَكُونَ عَلَى أَصْلٍ مَوْجُودٍ, that it is on something that is actually existing now. So if I were to say that this is going to be on something that doesn't exist now, so but it's going to exist, or I hope it exists, no, this doesn't work. It has to be on an actual something that exists now. So, and he says asl, which is like, in this case, it could either be for someone individually, like it could be for an individual, or like something that's mu'ayyan, or it can be for something that is like a certain characteristics. So say someone was going to say, I've made waqf for my, say they have a computer, that's a nice computer, they say I've made waqf for this, for tulab al-ilm, to go study shariah. And so this is not for anyone in particular, but rather it's for anyone who has the characteristics of talib al-ilm, to study shariah. In this case, anyone who fits this description, he can use this. All right, and so that this person has made this waqf for these types of people. And of course, people should respect this waqf. Like they shouldn't be like stealing anything that says waqf for this, that, or the other. Sometimes people have books that they'll put a waqf stamp in it, that this is for students to study, not for putting on the shelf and to leave it look nice. So in this case, like of course, we have to respect that this is not your property. If someone gives you something that's a waqf, it comes with those shurut, and it's not necessarily your property. You can use it if you have those shurut. If you don't, then you keep it moving, or you give it back to the person that's going to take care of it and make sure that it gets to the right people. And so this can either be with something that is individual, and he says aslin mawjood. So it needs to be something that is mawjood, like that is that exists. Or it could be like on a certain characteristics, but these things exist, like such as like tulab al-ilm or something of the sort. And of course, we can always use more waqf. And so then the next thing that he talks about, wafar la yanqata'. And so he says that it can be either on these two things. So he says on one, asl mawjood, or far'in la yanqata'. And so like this is what I mentioned here, which is like something that is, say someone says, I want this for my family members, or for all the, say someone who says, I want this for all of my lineage, or like for my lineage, for to have this certain thing. And so he makes a waqf for all of my lineage. I want them to have like a certain building for them to go and study in. So he makes this waqf for his lineage. Okay, that's something, even though maybe he doesn't have any kids now. And when he does have kids, then it can go. Or if he only has one kid, and then all of his kids and their kids and their kids. Or he can say the same thing like this. He can say this can be for all the fuqara. He's like, I want this to be for the fuqara. And then anyone who comes under this category of fuqara, then he comes under that. And whatever he adds onto this, as far as descriptors, this narrows it down. Like the more descriptors he put in there, it narrows it down to something more specific. And this, as long as it's not something that ends, of course, like fuqara and whatnot, or ulama, or mujtahideen, or mujahideen, like all of these things, they continue. So someone could make this waqf for them. And he also says, وَأَنْ لَا يَكُونَ فِي مَحْظُورٍ. And this is also another important thing. When someone does waqf, it can't be in something that is actually haram. Like, of course, this is, someone can't like give something to a liquor store or whatever, or make a waqf for something that's haram aslan. Because this is actually an act of worship, so of course it only can be, in a sense, this can only be in something that is permissible at least. For them to give this. They can't do this in something that's haram. And like this would be like if someone wanted to say, I wanted to give a waqf for building churches. Like this is of those things. Of course, this is not permissible whatsoever, and whatnot. And so also of this that he's gonna talk about is that he says, وَهُوَ عَلَى مَا شَرَطَ الْوَاقِفُ مِنْ تَقْدِيمٍ وَتَأْخِيرٍ وَتَسْوِيَةٍ وَتَفْضِيلٍ. So he says, and this is according to what the waqif is not the person standing. He's the person who is doing the waqf. So he is that this is according to what the waqif, what he decrees. So when he does this item, he says that this is for. So if he says this is for a certain time, then it's at that certain time. Or if this is for certain people and not for other people, then in this case, this is his right to do. And also such as like taswiyah, if he wants to do it, or tafdeel. So if he says, I want all of the women from my family to have this and all of the men to have this amount, and he changes the amount, whether it's equal or whether it's more, and he does this, then this is different. And he's allowed to do that. He's the one doing the waqf, and it can be however he wishes to do this, because he's the one who's actually like giving this and relaying this to those people. And so this is according to what he wishes to do. And there's a difference of this, because when someone does this waqf, there's a few different opinions. Well, who's the one who actually owns this item once he does the waqf? Who owns the item? And so there's a couple views. Does the person who did the waqf himself, is he the one that actually owns this item in essence? So he's the one who actually gets to tell, like, since this thing he did waqf on it, his ownership is the thing that makes them apply to this thing that he says. Or is it for the person that he made the waqf for? Is it their ownership? Do they own it? Or does it go to Allah? And this is something that is that Allah owns this thing, and that means like this is not connected to people anymore, but this is Allah's property. And this is the strongest opinion in the madhab, is that this is the property of Allah. Like this ownership is now for Allah. And then we are the ones that, like, we use whatever the conditions were for this waqf, we use this according to that. But this is Allah's property. And so a lot of times, like the masajid, and sometimes you'll see the water that we'll see on the side of the road that says fi sabilillah, musabbala. And like you'll call it musabbala, which is like that this is something that has been put in the fi sabilillah, that this is like Allah's property, that someone has done, of course, for sadaqah jariyah. But this is Allah's property, and so of course it needs to be respected properly, and people shouldn't be misusing the water or using it for stupid things and whatnot. And some people, in some of the books, they'll talk about this type of water should only be used for drinking. Sometimes they'll say this only should be used for drinking, and you can't make wudu with it. And so like they'll talk about this issue because it's for drinking. Some of them will actually have musabbala, and they'll say for drinking only, like on it, the shurb. And not for wudu. And they'll say, no, not for wudu. So you can't make wudu with this water if it says for drinking only. You have to leave it for drinking. So you have to be mindful of some of these things that may be waqf. This is not your property, but it is something that you can use according to its conditions, if you fit the conditions that it's for. And so this is where he has to say here in this chapter. Any questions before we? I think we'll probably close it and move to salah.
Can somebody use this, like this waqf, as a substitute getting away around inheritance, like inheritance law specifically? Let's say, I don't know the specific Islamic inheritance laws, right? But let's say someone that wouldn't usually be considered within inheritance, I were to give this thing to somebody outside of that.
As long as it's not within the third, like, and if he's in a place where he's going to die or he fears for his death, then he can't do anything more than a third. So if he wants to do a waqf with the third that he has left, and he's in his he's in a sickness that could lead to his death, and then he fears for his death in the sickness. In this case, he can do up to a third. Yeah, and he can do this. Of course, he shouldn't be trying to hurt his inheritors. But if he does feel like, oh, my cousin, he's not going to get anything if I die, and I know he needs something, so he does a waqf for him. Great. Or he does a wasiyah for him. And this isn't like a big problem. But if he's trying to hurt people, or he's going to create like harm within division in the family by doing this for this one person, and he's going to create rifts in the family, of course he shouldn't do that. But if he does know that when I die, my inheritance isn't going to reach the people that I want to benefit, and he wants to do a waqf for them, then great. There's no problem with this. If he does it while it's in his lifetime, that's one thing. Or if he does it wasiyah, then it would come from the third of his wealth at the end, like the third of the wealth that he can't do this with. Allah Ta'ala alam. Yeah, this is good.
I see if you're talking about water. It's only for drinking. Take wudu from the water. Is the wudu invalidated?
It's not invalidated, no. It's not invalidated, but it's haram. Yeah. Of course, this is if it's like says, if it's very clear about this. And you look back to the urf of what people mean by this as well. And at a time, though the urf was very strong when it said that li shurb, like this is only for drinking, that they'll talk about in the books, they'll say no, you can't have it anything other than drinking, you can't make wudu with it. So if you had it, it's like it's not there for like tayammum or something of that sort. Allah Ta'ala alam. And of course, if something is a masjid, then it has to take the rulings of a masjid. So if somebody says, this is, I'm making this a masjid, then in this case, it needs to actually be the ruling of a masjid. Or if they make it an Islamic center, that's different. And then there's a part of it that's a masjid, that's different. But if they say all of it's a masjid, then that's different. And then all of it needs to take the rulings of a masjid. Which of course there's different things about what should and shouldn't be done in a masjid that are important that people take note. And occasionally some people will have a youth center, and it's supposed to be a masjid, and this is not okay. Like if it's a youth center, then you can make it an Islamic center, and a part of it is the masjid. But you can't make the masjid a basketball court. Or a pool. Like the you can't say this is a masjid and you have a basketball court that people are playing in. You can't play basketball in a masjid. Like you can play outside the masjid in the basketball court. You can play in a youth center that's connected to a masjid. Okay, but an actual masjid, it has certain rulings and ahkam that are regarded to it. So people need to be careful when they have these awqaf, that they're careful about how they word it, so that they never go, if they say that this is a masjid, they need to make sure it takes the rulings of a masjid, and that nothing goes against the essence of a masjid inside of it. You know, such as playing basketball or other things, or Fortnite, or whatever, I don't know what people do. But, yeah. Allah Ta'ala a'lam. Any other questions? Inshallah, we'll head down and pray, and we'll come back and finish up. Just a couple things left.